Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
The market is bracing for something. The market has been bracing for some kind of a slowdown, and it could be a head fake. It could just be one of these mini panics in advance of something that doesn't actually come to pass.
Is it okay if I'm a little critical?
I don't like to hear that.
I think that people may take issue with that.
I've blasted Goldman many times. I don't need to hear that nonsense.
Tired of all the constant chatter? Let me help you make this real simple.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money. The Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, award-winning annuity expert and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
What's up on short cover? How many?
$1,070,000.
Chatter, chatter, chatter. Is it just me, or do you feel that everywhere you turn there's chatter? I guess if we could ask 100 random people to define the word chatter, it might be like the judge who was once asked to define the word pornography, and his response was, I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it. And that's the way with chatter, particularly all the financial chatter we see going on today. I don't know how to define it, but on today's show, we're sure going to know how to expose it and what to do about it. You know, with the advent of modern technology, this hasn't helped matters. Just look at your mobile device or search the internet. Think of all the cable news shows that are on today that were never on 40, 50 years ago. All we hear is chatter. And as we'll see, there's a lot of financial chatter out there, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes this financial chatter that many of you are following, it's going to be a huge obstacle for you to have a worry-free retirement. My wife Susan and I don't know what it is about early evening. That seems to be our time. I enjoy just sitting down and relaxing with Susan. And we were talking the other day. She said, Tony, I'd been working really hard. It was on a Tuesday afternoon. She said, why are you still working so darn hard? You don't have to work this hard. You know, you've been out there 34 years. You've got a great staff. You've got a great practice. And I said, Susan, I don't think you understand. It really is becoming more and more of a mission for me to help these savers, because I know for a fact, we're going to see this in the next segment, all of this chatter is creating more worry in the minds of savers. Again, for 34 years, I've been working with savers. I know what makes them tick, and I know what creates worry. So I told Susan, I said, I'm not going to ever stop doing this as long as I can continue to make good money, which I do. But more importantly, as long as I see evidence that I'm helping so many savers. And I'm very appreciative of that. By the way, regardless of your race, creed, religion, or financial personality, there's a couple of things that are common among us. For instance, we're recording this show on October 23rd, 2018. With us in the studio is America's favorite financial sidekick, producing the show, Aaron Orander, and his favorite sidekick, Matt Stebbins, who's doing a great job. But basically, all three of us are sitting here. It's very early in the morning. I got a full day of appointments following the recording of the show. And guess what? Unless the Lord decides to take us out of here today, but basically all three of us, and you included, have the same number of hours today, 24 hours. And we have the same ability to make choices about how we spend our time. For instance, Tony Walker Financial. We've got a new campaign we're advertising. Over the last 34 years, I've found that I've got a really unique gift. I call it a skill, I guess, because I've done so much of this, of quickly assessing someone's situation who comes to me and says, Tony, I'd really like to retire now, but I don't think I can. And my question is, well, what if we could help you retire sooner than you think? So with that said, we've started an ad campaign. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're sitting there getting ready to retire, or maybe you're on the younger side and you're just burned out, and you're wanting to know, when can you retire? Well, you have one of two options. You can meet with somebody who's trained in this area at no cost or obligation and find out whether you can retire now or not, or you can do this. I don't have a computer in front of me, so I'm going to ask Aaron to do this. Aaron, let's go live right now. We'll just Google this, all right? You can Bing it, whatever. We're not partial to either one, but let's just say we Google, can I retire now? Now, before you hit enter, Aaron, I'm going to predict something. I bet you the first couple of things that pop up are not going to be articles written by well-known retirement specialists like myself that are in the financial trenches day in and day out. I bet you several of those top ones that pop up will be from the financial world. You ready? Let's hit it, Aaron. And there you go. So the first couple of ones that are at the top of that list are people or institutions who are selling products. Now, granted, they might send you an article or something, but you got to ask yourself, wait a minute, are these people really trained, and do they have knowledge on how to help me assess accurately whether I really can retire sooner than I think? Can I retire now versus later? And that's the type of thing we're talking about. We're talking about this search that leads to literally thousands upon thousands of possibly opinions and what I would call chatter. Now, you've got to decide, are you going to take your valuable time and do all that stuff, or are you going to take a little extra time on the front end and meet with somebody like myself, especially if you're a saver, that understands by law how to work in your best interest. That's what a fiduciary does. I'm a fiduciary. That's the other thing. Many of you are online checking all this stuff out. You have no clue whether these people are going to be working in your best interest or not. Incidentally, go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, because on there, there's a couple of things we disclose that most advisors will never want to talk about. Number one, this is a popular page. Matt kind of reviews all of the things that people are looking at our site. And one of our most popular pages, look at this one. How do we get paid? Well, you ought to know that, but most people don't know how their advisor is charging them. That's a biggie. The other thing you might want to download is what a fiduciary is supposed to give you. It's called Form ADV Part 2. This tells you everything we do, how we're compensated, any potential conflicts of interest or whatever. But those two things are very, very important. But back to this idea about here searching for ideas, searching for opinions, out here listening to all the chatter. You know, it reminds me of a story a gentleman once told me about someone who was lost up in the state of Vermont. And driving around in Vermont, they noticed off to the side of the main road a small rural road, and the person was thinking about taking it, thinking that might get him home quicker. So they turn off on this road, and as soon as they turn off onto this small rural road, there was a sign that says, "Choose your ruts carefully. You'll be in them for the next 20 miles." Folks, again, we've only got 24 hours. We got to make choices. In order to do that, we've got to understand the common mistakes that savers are making by blindly rushing and following people that may or may not have their best interest at heart. When I come back, I'm going to talk about the 3 biggest mistakes people make with their money. Before we do that, though, I want to set the stage real quickly. We're going to talk briefly about my granddad. When I come back, I'm going to share with you my granddad's situation in 1978. We're going to bleed into what the real problem is now for savers and why this is a totally different game plan and how you better find somebody that you can trust to help you be worry-free in retirement. I'll be right back. You stay tuned.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Do you have a 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, 403b, or lump sum pension that you'd like to move to safer territory? Did you know that all the money you see on your 401k statement isn't really yours? Depending on your overall taxable income, the government has essentially a lien on your 401k that can tax as much as 40% of your money when you go to take it out. Tony Walker calls this the 401k tax tumor. For over 33 years, retirement specialist Tony Walker has helped thousands of savers worry less about money by creating game plans to deal with your tax tumor. Get control of your retirement by controlling the taxes owed on it. Schedule a free meeting to see if you can reduce your tax tumor and provide a guaranteed income you can never outlive. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. We're talking about the 3 biggest mistakes savers make by following all this chatter. Here's a cool picture of me and my granddad. This is shortly after he retired in 1978. We're sitting there with Inky the cat on Granddad's porch. You might be saying, hey, that house needs painting, Tony. My granddad really could care less. And here's a picture of me in the back. I think I was in college. Matt was impressed. He said, man, you were wearing hoodies before hoodies were in vogue. And Yeah, so in 1978, the hoodies were actually in, Matt, believe it or not. But, I mean, you might sit there and say, man, your granddad kind of lived in a dumpy place, Tony. And I would say, that is really not accurate. My granddad, when he retired in 1978 from Bell South, lived in a very, very comfortable home, as he called it. Now, keep in mind, back then, he could fix anything. The guy, it didn't matter. I never saw a service person ever show up at his house. When he retired in 1978, he had a pension, all right? That was what he called his mailbox money. So he would, the idea of him getting on the internet, which was not even around then, but the idea of getting on the internet and Googling on how to retire early, responding to a dinner seminar invitation, worried about the tax tumor in his 401k. He didn't have a 401k, so he didn't have to worry about that. He had no worries. Now, not only did he not have financial worries, here's the other problem we've got. Granddad never had the internet. They didn't have cable then. In fact, I remember I was in broadcasting at the time. I double majored in college in broadcasting and psychology, and I can remember hearing about cable. So I talked to my granddad. I was down there hanging out with him, and I said, hey, Granddad, do you know there's going to be something called cable coming out pretty soon? And he's like, what's cable? And I said, well, they're going to have these cables run everywhere, and that way, rather than this little antenna perched up on your roof, getting these 3 lowly channels, we can get ESPN, it's a new network they're starting, and news and all this stuff. And he's like, well, is it free? And I said, no, I don't think it's free. I think it's only like $9 a month they're proposing. And he thought that was the strangest thing in the world. He's like, wait a minute, I get free TV. Why would I pay $9? I mean, his response was hilariously funny. Now, look to where we are now, folks. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying let's go back to Granddad's day, you know, sell everything and live in a kind of a rough-looking house out in the middle of nowhere. But think about this. He didn't have cable. We do. What are you spending on cable, by the way? All right. He didn't have internet. We do. What are you spending on internet? He didn't have cell phones. He had free long distance, by the way. We got cell phones. So not only have we're spending hundreds upon hundreds of dollars a month for this stuff, we are also exposing ourselves to what? More chatter. Kind of interesting, isn't it? More chatter, potentially a lot more worry, and a lot more potential of getting into that financial rut we just talked about. So how can we avoid this? What's going on? What do I see in my practice day in and day out? What are these 3 mistakes that I keep seeing savers make? So we're going to set the stage. Let's name the 3 things here real quick. The first mistake savers make is actually being referred by friends, family, the internet, coworkers, to financial advisors that not always, now I'm not saying always, not always, these people are working in your best interest. So the point is, just because the Fonz or somebody on TV says you ought to do this, or just because a coworker says, hey, I'm working with this guy, you ought to work with this guy. That's all well and good, nothing wrong with checking them out, but you want to make sure those people are working in your best interest. Well, how do you do that? Leads to our second problem. Most savers that I talk to, when they're getting ready to meet with somebody, I'll talk to them, I'll say, so do you really know what these folks are recommending to you? Do you know the proper questions to ask about what the advisor's pitching for you to do? That's a big problem. And then finally, number 3, know thyself. See, that's why I developed the 3 personalities of money. I learned that a lot of people are wired differently. That's okay. We work with savers. And you might be saying, Tony, I keep hearing you say that. What are the 3 personalities? Well, there's savers, investors, and speculators. I kidded with a couple that came in the other day. It was a real dilemma because the gentleman, I could tell, was an investor. He did all of his own stuff. He was very confident in what he did. His wife, man, she was a true saver. And she wasn't talking much during this meeting. And I finally said, ma'am, if something happens to him first, are you going to want to do what he's been doing with all these investments? And she said, I would sell it all in a heartbeat. She said, this stuff makes me a nervous wreck. It's risky. I don't understand it. So I looked at him and I said, can you understand her situation? And he said, I guess I do. He never really thought of it that way. Well, folks, the problem is many of you are taking financial advice from advisors that are actually giving advice that are more suited to investors and speculators. It doesn't mean their advice is wrong. Hear me out on this. They may be great advice, but let's say they're telling you to put 80% of your money in the stock market. If you're worried sick over that advice, if that's what you're doing, you're following that advice and you're worried, there's a good chance you're a saver. You shouldn't have 80% of your money in the market. Do what makes you happy. Do what helps you sleep better at night, and that might be only 20% in the market. I don't know what that number is, but I can help you find that out. So here's what you need to do. I've developed a real simple test. It's free. It's online. You want to go to the number 3personalities.com, 3personalities.com. And once you get there, all you're going to do is take this little quiz. And if you come back as a saver, or if it says your predominant personality is that of a saver, give us a call, because we know savers like nobody else. I can assure you we'll take the worry out of your money. All right, I love this when we have actual people come in that I can sit there and after I talk to them say, ma'am, can I use this on the show? And she's like, please do. She thought this could really help people out there, because this is an individual. She had seen our TV show in the past. She realizes we're expert in the fields of annuity. She had purchased an annuity in 2015. Let's set the stage, and I'm going to show you the actual statement she's looking at. So she purchased an annuity. Where did she purchase it from? A friend of the family who used this individual. Okay, so maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. You're going to find out that didn't help at all. So anyway, she purchased this annuity. She calls the person recently because she has questions, and we're going to find out what happened. All right, so let's put this annuity statement up here in full screen. I've blotted out all the stuff. I've redacted all the stuff. I feel like I'm working for the government now or something. But anyway, you can see her first name up here is Janet. The product name, blah, 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 it doesn't really matter. It's an indexed annuity. Actually, it's not a bad product, quite frankly. We represent this company. The issue date, that's when she took this out, August 10th of 2015. The date prepared was August 11th of 2018. So obviously, she got this statement. With an annuity, you get an anniversary statement based on when you took the contract out. All right, this is a fixed indexed annuity. Now, look at this. In August of 2015, she put in $258,000. All right, let's slide over the summary of activity. There's three values in an annuity. You want to look at the contract value, the surrender value, and what I call the income value. Now, depending on the company, they go by different names, all right? So the accumulation value, you can see this. Let's highlight as of 8/10/2017, all right? 8/10/2017, Aaron's highlighting this, was $309,834. Now, I asked this young lady, first of all, I'm looking at this statement. I know what I'm looking for. She doesn't even understand what she's got. I said, by the way, why did you purchase this annuity? She said, well, I was told that the principal would be protected and I wasn't losing anything. I said, great. So why did this go down from $309,000 to roughly $299,000 the next year? See there where it says 8/10 of 2018? She said, I don't know. That's why I called the agent. I said, well, what did the agent say? And he said, well, that's because of the fee. All right. She didn't know anything about these fees. Nothing was told of any fees. No disclosure. Not good. Let's slide down. See where it says total rider charges.
Bad. That's bad. That's bad.
This is what's called an income annuity. So it's a fixed indexed annuity. They've added an income rider, and that rider, unbeknownst to her, comes with a fee. And the way they're charging this fee is really, really high. As you can see, this fee for the last year, look at this, almost $10,000, $9,855. And what happened was that's subtracted from the contract value. Notice it went down to $299. It's also from the surrender value. Look at the surrender value. If she would have cashed this in, that's what surrender value means. In 2017, she would have gotten $248,000. In other words, she would have lost $10,000 from her original purchase. However, because the annuity did not go up in value, and also they subtracted the fee, look at that surrender value. Now if she surrenders it this year, she gets $235,000. So I said, what did you ask the agent to do, by the way? And she said, I called, here's his name, James. He's from out of town somewhere. She said, I called James and said, James, can we not move this somewhere? And his response apparently was, oh yeah, we can move this into an annuity with no fees. And I said, have you heard back from James? She said, no. And I said, you want to know why you haven't heard back from James? Because he's not going to be able to do this. He doesn't want to deal with the fact that if you cancel this, ma'am, not only have you put $258,000 in that hasn't grown, you're going to only get $235,000 plus this has what's called market value adjustment, MVA. It actually could be less than this when you surrender it. And at this point, I'm serious. She is almost in tears. She said, Tony, none of this was ever explained to me. She said, I thought I had, what's this number down here, Tony, this guaranteed income base. I thought I could take out the $349,000. What's that number? I said, ma'am, that's called your income based or your income rider. And that money, the only way you can get to that money is if you elect to take what I call mailbox money. Now, on the one hand, this isn't a bad contract. The problem is she trusted somebody blindly. She didn't know what questions to ask when she purchased her annuity. She put her life savings in this, folks. This is her retirement money. And now, basically, she's taken that rural road in Vermont. She is stuck in this rut. What is the rut? She has to keep it in force now. She cannot get out of this unless she wants to take a huge loss, which I would not recommend. And she's going to have to relegate herself to taking the lifetime income, which is not bad. It's not a bad thing. She's going to get mailbox money. That's not the point. The point is, this is not what she thought she was getting. So it's a huge dilemma, and that might be your dilemma right now. You might be sitting there saying, Tony, that's me. I have no idea what I've got. I've been working with an advisor, or maybe you're out there going it alone. Worse yet, you've got a 401k. You're getting ready to roll over. You want to potentially take a chance of rolling it into something like this and not even know what to do with it. Imagine you really are like that person up in Vermont. You're riding down the road. Things are fairly safe right now, but before you get off that road and do something, just know that you might, by following the chatter, get into a rut you cannot get out of. Don't do that. Give us an opportunity to meet in person. There's no cost, no obligation. Not going to hurt anything. You're going to be talking to one of the most experienced retirement advisors in the country. Folks, I speak all over the country. If you're talking about annuities, I've written as much annuities as anybody in the country. I've been using these products since 9/11. We're also a fiduciary. So if you don't want to put all your money in the annuities, that's fine. You don't have to. We have a great platform if you want to put a little bit of your money at risk in a Charles Schwab platform. I manage that personally. In fact, be sure to put that disclosure up, Aaron, on the Charles Schwab, but in fact, since starting this program back in April of 2017, we have over $55 million under management. So certainly we can do that, and the fee is about a third of what most advisors are charging you to manage your money. So take advantage now. Go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, click on that Let's Get Started button, and let's set up a free consultation to review your situation. Well, does the Bible have anything to say about chatter? It does have something to say about chatter and our notion, this flesh of ours that wants to keep going back and listening to all this chatter, and why we don't want to just be content with what we had, kind of like Granddad. When I come back, I'm going to share some very encouraging words from the Apostle Paul. But first, I got to get me a cup of coffee. I'll be right back.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Can you afford for your money to take a hit with the stock market being so volatile these days? Nobody can time the market, but having a retirement game plan with Tony Walker Financial gives you peace of mind and sleep insurance. Learn how to prevent losses in your retirement accounts and plan your retirement around an income you can never outlive. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com today to schedule a personal meeting with Tony to secure your hard-earned money. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Oh yeah, a good cup of coffee on this beautiful Tuesday morning in Louisville. And Matt and Aaron just doing a great job with the show. Speaking of shows, we recently talked on one of our prior shows about this notion of a conversion that we go through when God kind of rebirths us and takes us from focusing so much on walking in the flesh, but being led by God's Spirit, which to me is the true path to contentment. This is why we, I think, search so much out there for all of these activities, whether it's on the internet or watch TV. We are looking or hoping in the flesh that maybe there's something else better out there for us. Maybe you feel like you're stuck in a rut. So these activities are things that Granddad never worried about. If you're just joining us, he didn't have to worry about the internet because it wasn't around. He didn't have to worry about tax tumors because he didn't even have a 401k. Granddad didn't keep up with the Joneses because he enjoyed his little house in Troy, Kentucky that was paid for incidentally. He was full of contentment. And looking back, spending so much time with Granddad, I think a lot of it was he just accepted his lot in life. He was perfectly fine with what he had. He lived by that playbook and he enjoyed his retirement. So what does the Bible have to say about retirement? Nothing actually, but it does have something to say about contentment. In fact, Romans 7:15, let's turn there, Aaron. Paul says, "For that which I am doing, I don't understand. For I'm not partaking in the things I want to do, but the very thing I hate to do." So let's think about this. I'll get on myself. I enjoy watching some of these cable news programs, but you know what generally happens after I watch a cable news program for very long? Sometimes I get in a bad mood. Sometimes I think, well, maybe I ought to be doing something different or thinking something different. And in many cases, I've just watched an hour full of chatter. And in fact, I'm less content. So I think about, that's not that I don't want to watch TV, but am I wasting my time sometimes on the wrong things? Remember, you only got 24 hours. We talked about that. And out of that time, as we expose ourselves to the views of others, it is going to shape our thinking, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. Now, the key is, are you making progress? This is what Paul's talking about, towards this road of contentment. And this is very visible in the way that Paul starts out his life. He converts over, he begins to walk with the Lord, but he says, wait a minute, why do I keep wanting to do the things I don't want to do? I keep choosing to do these things that are robbing me of my joy. So we go over now, let's go over to Philippians 3:12. These are famous verses, Aaron. This is where Paul found himself as he began to follow the Lord more and more. He says, not that I've already obtained it. He's talking about true contentment, or what he would say perfection. I dreamed up this book. Let's throw this book up, Aaron. I don't even know, but yeah, we've got a copy here. It's called Perfecting Your Walk in Retirement. I wrote this book based on this verse. And my thought was, as we get older, we should become more perfect. That's what God is talking about here, based on our life's experiences. Okay, so Paul says, hey, I haven't reached perfection yet, but I am going to press on for what Christ has done. Verse 13, he says, forgetting, I love this, forgetting what lies behind. So if you've struggled with finances, if you've made some bad mistakes, you know what Paul would say? Forget it. Press on towards the upward call of Christ Jesus. And you know what Paul says in Philippians 4:11? He says, with all of these struggles, with all of these paths I've been on, with all of these circumstances that are not always that joyous, you know what he learned? He said, I've learned to be content in whatever circumstance I'm in. And I hope that's you today. No matter where you are financially, I hope you can learn to be more content. And I can tell you, like Paul, you focus on heaven more and less on this world, you'll be more content. Well, speaking of the world, what about your money? What about your focus on your money? I can help you with that. If you're sitting there right now and you're saying, Tony, I don't feel like I've got a game plan at all. I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm retired. I'm getting ready to retire. Maybe I just want to get a game plan in place for the future. Take advantage of this free offer to meet with me in person. Simple to do. All you do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that Let's Get Started button, or you can call us at 877-499-9255, 877-499-WALK to get started. And remember, as always, there's no cost or obligation for you and I to meet. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. I've certainly enjoyed being with you. You remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.
Thank you for watching the Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker. If you need a safe and simple game plan for your retirement, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and schedule a free, no-obligation meeting with Tony.